September 21st, 2021. County Commissioners Alvin, Schaaf, Ronnie, Maez, Warren.Brown, County Attorney Todd Weaver, County Clerk, Recorder Christy Archuleta, President. Call the meeting to order at 1:31. If you haven't, please silence your cell phones. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, are there any disclosures?
I think just disclosure that I sent on the board of directors for Aspen House.
Approval of adjustments to the agenda. That's an entertaining motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Is there a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, now it's time for public comments. Call you. You'll have 3 minutes. Please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. First up is Ronnie Sledge.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Sledge, 48 Kelsey Circle, and I'm back to just make a response on the COVID-19 package. And as we might have remembered, it was for the first responders, and I kind of wanted it more for public and people that had problems in their businesses, lost their businesses and jobs and etc. So I saw, and I assume this is already paid out, that whoever the people got with $107,000 for the COVID relief package. So I decided to look up the definition of first responders. That is a person, like as a police or firefighter, EMT, anyone that's trained in medical urgent care and procedures that moves quickly to the scene of the accident or the disaster. That's what I assumed first responders were. That's what I assumed the package was going to go for. And even though that I know everybody plays a role in every action, dispatch, etc., it was surprising to me people in offices and positions and county positions received the package, more money from the package than others did. I do agree with Sheriff Patrol, Sheriff Emergency Management, questionable on attorney, administration, finance, animal control, detention, Mountain Express, Warren Administration, Department of Human Services, dispatch, landfill, Pagosa Transfer Station, Archuleta Transfer Station, and airport. I was just hoping for more transparency perhaps and better communication on where the monies go. And as we know, we've lost another business in town that started out from COVID, situations of being closed down, not able to even work, and then to go at less than half capacity, employees' problems, not having a full-time job, employees' problems, not being able to pay their rent. So another one, we lost another business in town. So it's just my opinion that the funds should have been maybe discussed with public or people that actually were affected, that actually did lose and are now still paying for COVID. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next up, Bethany Cole.
Hello, Bethany Cole, P.O. Box 5976. I find it fitting today that there's going to be a proclamation of the Constitution. I'm also here as a reminder that I'm going to be that thorn in your side. That I will always stand here and remind you that our rights being violated will not go away. Commissioner Maez, you're on the Parks and Rec Board as an advisor. but nobody's advised them of the unlawful acts that just happened with KSUT. Mr. Commissioner Brown, you're quoted in the paper that you want more communication, which I love. I think we should do that. More communication needs to happen. Who initiates the communication when there's an intergovernmental agreement to be made between town council and Archuleta County? There's quite a few. I'm curious how you decide which topic is more important. The ones I've looked up and seen, it seems like it's all about money. But when it comes to upholding our rights and your oath, it kind of seems on the wayside. I'm a little disappointed that I received no communication back when I reached out to you about my rights being violated with KSUT. Now, before you tell me that's a town issue, today you're going to sign an proclamation that says, we urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect the privileges of being an American with all rights and responsibilities. You signed a reaffirmation of the Constitution stating that you would uphold our rights. Why did I have to serve a cease and desist to go up on that hill to exercise my American rights? I had to serve legal papers in order to get my privileges that you're going to sign today as an American citizen. That bothers me. So when we're proclaiming a constitutional week, what does that look like for you? Does it look like we're just going to sign something and then it's going to go to the wayside? Or we can actually do something when our rights are being violated? This is an intergovernmental communication issue. And there should be something happening between the governments. And I came to each and every one of you. I went to town council. I've heard nothing. I don't know why we have to keep asking for our rights to be upheld, the oath to be upheld, for our elected public servants to do their job or uphold the law. I'm not sure if there's just perhaps not sound legal advice, or you're just blatantly turning a blind eye to everything that's happening. I'm a free, living, breathing American, and nobody should have to file a cease and desist order to get up and have all the amenities of being an American person in this country, especially in Archuleta County. So again, I want to know what this means to you as commissioners when you're going to sign this proclamation today, because I think we need to know. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
You took the signage.
I put one in.
No, you took the one that was up there.
Oh.
I'm just gonna take it with me. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I believe that's the only ones we had. Move on to the proclamation. Linda Hobbs. Is she present? In the back.
And back, and back. Good afternoon, commissioners and council members. My name is Linda Hobbs. I am with the Sarah Platt Decker chapter of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. I am somewhat hopeful that somebody has a copy of this proclamation so I may read it, or if you would like to read it. Thank you. I have here with me the regent of this chapter that is serving both Archuleta and La Plata counties. Candace, would you like to stand up here with me? Sure. Okay, thank you. Okay, proclamation by the Board of County Commissioners of Archuleta County, Colorado. Whereas it is the privilege and duty of the American people to commemorate our nation's founding document on this 234th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America with appropriate ceremonies and activities. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through 23 as Constitution Week. Citizens, leaders, and officials are encouraged to conduct ceremonies and programs that bring together community members to reflect on the importance of active citizenship, recognize the enduring strength of our Constitution, and reaffirm our commitment to the rights and obligations of citizenship in this great nation. And whereas the Sarah Platt Decker chapter of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution hereby celebrate, honor, and reflect on the fundamental document of the United States of America and the patriots who sacrificed so much to create this nation. Therefore, the Board of County Commissioners of Archuleta County, Colorado, do hereby proclaim the following. 1. We declare the week of September 17 through 23, 2021 as Constitution Week in Archuleta County. And 2, we urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. Approved and adopted this 21st day of September 2021 in Pagosa Springs, Archuleta County, Colorado. Signed by Alvin Schaaf, Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioners have any comments?
I do not.
Thank you. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the proclamation declaring the week of September 17 through 23, 2021 as Constitution Week as read.
Second.
Second.
So a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen. We also worked with the town of Pagosa Springs to ring the bells on September 17th, which was...
I heard.
Did you hear them?
I
Well,
did.
thank you very much. The town
I
helped
sure
us
did.
do that, and Janice was able to speak with some of the school-age children as they were walking home and engage them just for a few moments. So we appreciate your consideration on this proclamation, and we hope you have a good afternoon.
Thank
Need
you.
a
Sonia,
signature?
very nice work on that.
Matt, we gotta get a picture.
That would be great. Grab my picture-taking device. Great. Thank you very much.
Nice work.
How about up here?
Yeah, it's very nice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, Janice, why don't you, may I invite you over
Whichever way you want to go.
and, oh,
We can get this one and then throw this one.
All right, smile. Perfect.
You wanna get
Thank
one of those
you.
circles in real quick?
would you mind? Just, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna recess the regular meeting at 1:44, convene the liquor board consent agenda. Who's that, was that just?
Commissioners, this afternoon, for your consent agenda for the liquor board, we have 2 items. The first one is consideration and approval of a bed and breakfast permit renewal for Elkwood Manor Pagosa Springs, doing business as Elkwood Manor Bed and Breakfast. And the second one is consideration and approval of a hotel restaurant liquor license renewal for Pamela J. Wallace, doing business as ASchaaf Springs Bar and Grill. That concludes your consent agenda, and the recommendation is to approve as presented.
Entertain a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the liquor board consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, we're adjourn the liquor board and reconvene the regular meeting at 1:45. Excuse me.
So for your consent agenda this afternoon, Commissioners, first we have payable warrants and purchase cards from September 8th through September 21st, 2021. Then you have regular meeting minutes from September 7th, 2021. Special meeting minutes from September 14th, 2021. Then consideration of resolution, what's the number are we on?
74.
74. So consideration of resolution 2021-784 to consolidate 2 lots into 1 lot in Pagosa Heights Estate owned by Shane, I'm gonna butcher this really badly, by Barsick, and Sean Mills. E, consideration and approval of the independent contractor agreement for Wasteline Incorporated. F, consideration and approval of the corridor independent contractor agreement with Shannon Lee Molderas. G is consideration and approval of a ground lease agreement for hangar 501A. And then H is consideration and approval of ground lease agreement for hangar 510I. And staff recommends approval as presented.
Okay, entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
That motion is second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. On to new business. Consideration and approval of establishing a personnel committee. And, Tina, you want to say anything about it? We had a discussion about this morning.
We did have a discussion about it this morning. I just wanted to add that for the personnel board, we would be also creating and establishing a training program for all employees, mandatory for all employees. I think I neglected to mention that this morning. So that's all I have to add about the personnel board. For the safety board, I have the figures for the premium if you want those now.
Would you please?
So our premium is $152,772 annually, and so our savings would be $7,638.60.
That's the 5%
Yes.
that you referred to this morning? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Commissioners have any questions or comments?
No, sir.
I do not.
Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the establishment of county personnel committee as presented.
Second.
Motion is second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And then Tina did address the next item, P, consideration and approval of establishing a safety committee.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the establishment of the county safety committee as presented.
Second.
Then a motion is second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, item C, consideration and approval of Colorado rock and dirt excavation for Archery Park Road access. Tim?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. As mentioned, this is for consideration to award contract to Colorado Rock and Dirt for building a road and access off of Cloman Boulevard to the Archery Park. As mentioned, it is just the road for now, not a full-blown parking lot or anything, but does provide access to the top of the mountain. The amount of the contract is $45,335. And it would be my recommendation as Archuleta County Road and Bridge to award the contract to Colorado Rock and Dirt.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners have any questions?
None but a comment, Commissioner Schaaf, if I may.
Yes, sir.
This archery park has been in process for quite some time already, and it will be named after Larry Fisher. It will be the Larry Fisher Archery Park. The other part is we have property that's inaccessible to the public. And I think the building and the establishing of this road will allow a lot of the public access to this property so that they can either go out and archery shoot, or when there's not an archery shoot going on, they can go and walk. I think it's very beneficial that the county move on this, using probably the Conservation Trust Fund, which can only be used for Parks and Rec. With that being said, I don't know if there's any other comment.
Do you have any comments?
Just a question, Tim, if this were to be awarded, do you know how soon the work would start?
How soon? I
Yes.
believe he's ready to move on it now.
Okay.
So I think I could have it going by Monday of next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve the estimate from Colorado Rock and Dirt Excavation, the amount not to exceed $45,335 for the culvert and road work on Coleman Boulevard as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Excuse me. Okay, consideration of resolution 2021-75, adopting county residential property tax incentive program. Mr. Walt, Mr. Weaver, sorry. If you did.
It's okay. Old habits here. So before you this afternoon, Commissioners, I said resolution 2021-75. This would allow for setting up a property tax incentive policy. So it would allow those who meet qualifications to apply for and receive a refund of the county portion of their property taxes. I set forth in Exhibit A the resolution that involves construction, to be new construction up to appraised value of $300,000. Well, the home should be owner occupied or long-term rental, cannot be used for a short-term rental. Property owner will need to apply. Tax incentive is good for 5 years. Maximum allowed is $400 per year. So it will allow at least some type of incentive for more affordable housing to be built in the county, to drop in the bucket, but every drop adds up.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying close attention on that. Did you say the amount on the buildings was less than 300,000?
We pulled it for again.
I think that's what it was.
I think I can't remember, it was 300,000 and below, or let's see how it was worded. Up to $300,000. So the incentive applies to appraisal values up to $300,000. And it is also, I want to reiterate that it can be transferable once. So for example, if a builder builds, owns a lot, builds a house, and then sells it to the initial homeowners, that incentive can be transferred from the builder to the first homeowners.
Right, and spec homes, so then spec homes for long term
Right.
are eligible for this.
So it's transferable once.
Commissioners, have any further questions?
I don't have any further questions. I do have a comment. I would like to say that I believe that the county has taken a number of steps to support affordable housing. In the recent past, we have partnered with folks within our community to make homes affordable or more affordable and accessible. And while this particular step I don't believe will address every need for every person that is having difficulties in affording a home, it will provide and can provide assistance and enable those within this particular price point range to own a home more affordably. I would also like to say that I would encourage the other taxing entities that have the legal capabilities of doing so to join us in making this a group effort.
Well stated.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing further, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt resolution 2021-74, is that correct? Or 75, excuse me. Adopting the county residential property tax incentive policy as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, item number E is consideration and approval of funding request from American Rescue Plan Act.
Yes, Commissioners. So over multiple work sessions, we have a number of organizations that have approached the Warren County Commissioners about possibly receiving funding from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA for short. The county was awarded just over $2.7 million to be over 2 years. There are a number of criteria set forth by the Treasury Department in our interim final rule, which allows the parameters of these funds to be spent. I provided you my thoughts on what requests meet those criteria, those parameters. And now it's really up to you to decide how to divvy up the funds and distribute them to those requesting entities.
Excuse me, any questions or comments from this?
One, as you know, the priority of the sheriff's hallway for connection for the justice facility for the courts, and I think we already had a special meeting on that decision too. And the expense of that was over $300,000, which was used for a hallway to be built between the jail and the justice facility. And I know there's a lot more people in here that really don't know about it or didn't attend that other special meeting that we had to enact so that we can expedite on the issue, so we can capitalize on the savings of the building of that hall, which it will be used as safety and health for the inmates, for keeping them secure and having them go to court, as well as UV ultraviolet light for disinfecting the possibility of getting the COVID spread through the inmates or even from the inmates to the justice, the judicial people or personnel too. So that was the reason for us establishing that. So $300,000+ has already been spent out of that ARPA money?
I think 280.
280, okay. It's better to be over than under.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that amount has been spent out of that ARPA money, so then we still have a remainder of that, which we have 2 cycles in 2 years that we can spend that.
Correct. And there were several of these that weren't eligible, is that correct, Mr. Weaver?
Yeah, I mean, for, there was a request, I know, for capital funding, I think, from the food system, the Food Equity Coalition. Put my glasses back on so I can read. Under the interim final rule parameters that I set, to me, it didn't meet the criteria, unfortunately, because the capital improvements had to be directly regarding to public buildings. That's why the sheriff's office request for that hallway, the walkway to connect the new jail to the new courthouse was allowed because it was based on COVID mitigation.
Yes.
And it was to a public facility, 2 public facilities being connected. And the interim final rule has, again, it's kind of a bit gray in certain areas, but it was pretty clear that capital projects had to be towards public buildings or like healthcare facilities. And so it kind of had a limited scope when it comes to capital, unfortunately. So because of that, it does not appear to qualify. The other request from the Food Equity Coalition, in my mind, most definitely qualifies. It's just the capital funding doesn't.
I don't envy you guys. If there's nothing for
Well, I guess, priority 1 was the sheriff's. So
right.
the other part of the ARPA, the other thing they focus on too, and I'm sure Mr. Weaver can back me on this, is broadband infrastructure and expanding of it and connectivity. They've expressed that this is probably one of the infrastructure priorities that the ARPA money was funded for. I could see broadband was presented by our broadband managers, and the total sum of that came up to about approximately $599,000 in infrastructure that they need to do to get accomplished. And I think this was a one-time ask for this year, but it'll help expedite and get more connectivity for Archuleta County as far as even extending the fiber and utilizing the fiber network. Am I pretty much correct on that?
That's correct. That's one of the main focuses of the ARPA funding and the interim final rule when it comes to capital projects, as I just kind of mentioned. They did focus a significant amount of time on the approval of broadband, sewer, and water. With the pandemic and the resulting quarantines that happened throughout the nation, people working from home, students going to school from home, they saw the absolute need to address the broadband gap between rural and urban areas. And so almost every broadband project that's been proposed meets the parameters of the interim final rule just for that need. Again, if that ever happens again, for schooling, for work from home, for remote working, which a lot of the country is going through and continues to. A lot of the major corporations are delaying the return of their office workers to the office through the end of the year. So the need for remote and for broadband access is just going to continue to increase and increase. And so the ARPA, the interim funding will really push broadband very hard.
If I might, Commissioner Maez, I just wanted to see if, to make sure that I heard you correctly. When you spoke about broadband and their request, did you say this year or did you mean over the next 2 years?
I meant this year.
Okay, so there may be an additional ask next year?
This is, and actually phase 1A, fiber redundancy to up-down CNL and the scan. That's, phase 1, so I'm sure there's gonna be a phase 2.
Well, phase 2 is
Yeah, phase
Next
B,
hanger.
and phase B is the next hanger, yeah.
Right.
So I think this is, I don't think there'll be another ask other than the initial, usually 100,000 what they used to operate, from PILT for next year's funding. So I think this probably might cover it all for this year.
And then we would pay this out of the 50% we've received this year?
Yes,
Okay, even if so if a project takes place next year, will we give them that money next year? I'm just trying to see how much we have to work with.
like this year?
Yes.
I think that with the money that, if there's gonna be another ask next year, I think that should probably be properly presented to us again for the next year's funding, but initially, this will help get Archuleta County very well established as far as in the broadband connection, and as far as getting the first steps in the ground to really get an absolute connection to move forward even for next year.
Okay.
But it's up to us whether we fund all of it or half of it. But if we only fund half of it, we only get half of the work done. So then they'd have to wait another year to get the other half completed. I think the full funding of this, in my mind, is priority number 2, with the sheriff's office being priority 1.
Okay. In I guess the list that I compiled, broadband was actually the number 1 priority for me. But as I looked at it, it was to be paid out over a 2-year period because they couldn't get all the work done this year. There's only a few months left in it, so some of the funding would come out of the amount that we received next year.
I think that's probably the case. I don't know how they're gonna accomplish this year.
Yeah, they only bill us as they get the work done.
Okay, so I know they're kind of a driven group, and I thought maybe it would just be impressive. Okay,
I think it would be okay to do it half.
that's all I had on that topic. I would like to comment on our requests for funding our various housing, our
Yes.
affordable housing groups. Although we may not be able to fund all of the asks, I think it's very important that we do try to support this and your asks as much as we can. So we are being good stewards of the money and good stewards of our community in making sure people have a place to live and it's a livable environment. So that's all the comment I have. Thank you.
Yeah, that's my number 3 is the Osmond House and Archuleta Housing Corp. And Archuleta Housing Association.
I would have to agree on that. Anything further?
So to be clear on broadband,
So I asked him.
Commissioner
There we
Eric
go.
just walked in, so he may be able to clarify about the funding request from broadband.
Thank goodness.
Eric, on the grand total funding, it's looking like close to approximately about 600,000.
Put those 3 together.
Yeah, I'm compiling all of them together. So that's for this year's ask, correct?
That was what Jason and I had allocated for, yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, go ahead.
what, I think the question is, are you gonna be able to complete the work this year, or would it be some of it this year, or we can fund some of it next year?
You mean like 2021, December 31st?
Right.
No, I don't think any of those projects would be completed. Some of them would be started potentially this year, depending on the partner, like with the Hatcher one in particular. We're still in, works with Black Hills Energy, and they want us to get started, so we'll see.
Could you come to the podium first?
Sorry?
Eric,
Go to the podium.
so we can hear you.
Just so she can.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I can go to the
Sorry. Not to put you in the spotlight. Me, it's fine, I'm going to.
So the 400,008 was the earmark for getting to Hatcher, and I've in our talks with Black Hills Energy, which is by no means a certainty, but we're still heavily proceeding with that. Then they wanted to start as soon as this year, but it's a project that would be finished in the spring. In order for that to happen, if there was a requirement of the county commitment to make that project go, it might need to be allocated in that time frame. Like if we're talking about the next May, June, as the next allocation, it's possible I could say, well, we don't have the money now, but we'll have it in May. But I don't know exactly how that could play out. Our other option of getting to Hatcher, and that's why we kind of put that, as a either or, would be going on a DOLA project, and that would take a little bit more time. So that would certainly be probably not even starting until after the allocation next year. So that one in particular, the CNL, which I believe is the carrier neutral location upstairs, by the hospital, that wouldn't probably be started this year either, but it could be started in the spring to be finished before the allocation. A good chance of that. It really needs to happen, even with COVID and the hospital. There's even more reason to move that out of the hospital now than there used to be. So that's one, and it's a fairly small project, so it's not like we're talking about major construction, trenching all the way from Hatcher down to Nick's hangar or anything like that, and getting all that coordination. And then the last one, that was the one that was probably going to be the one that we start first with DOLA. The going to La Plata link and then up to Coleman Boulevard. So that's the one we've been talking about for 2 or 3 years, is trying to find the right funding mechanism for it. So all of them have the potential of starting this year. None of them, I would say, would be finished before the end of the year, but at least 2 of the 3, if not all 3, could potentially be finished by the next time of the next allocation. So as much as I can, that's not a lot of certainty. That's all I can really tell you, because we're waiting for a lot of other partners to come into line and to know what our funding opportunities are before we can commit to it.
So will the funding, if you have full funding now, will that help expedite or will it not?
Well, it always helps. Yeah, how do you say it's like, yeah, we've got the funding, at least from the county side. That's not the only linchpin in at least the Hatcher, Black Hills and Pause and potentially Visionary, even all you have to align if that's going to go forward the way it is. But if we have our portion, then they'll say, hey, we've got this, so we've got this more, that makes it that much more economically viable for the whole project to go forward. For the other ones, they're a little bit smaller. I would say the one that goes for the fiber loop 1B to Stevensville, Coleman, the matching portion for that for the DOLA. It just depends on whether DOLA approves our application, which they're not going to approve an application where we say we have no money to put in there's a match requirement.
Right.
So it's a contingency that you apply for, but they still have to approve it. And so there's always a possibility they could not. So does that answer all the questions?
I think so.
Okay. Sorry I was late. I was just over at the McCabe Creek trying to figure out where we're putting the conduit there.
You're out of time, we're still talking about it.
Yeah.
And for your information, commissioners, when it comes to the funding, I've got the final rule in front of me. The rule does say the projects, one of the questions is, can the projects continue past December 31st, 2024, assuming funds have been obligated prior to that date? And the answer is yes. So the cost being incurred by December 31, 2024 to only require that the recipients have obligated the funds by such date. The period of performance will run until December 31, 2026. So long as they are incurred or basically obligated by 2024 and the construction is completed by 2026, they meet the requirements of the interim final rule for broadband projects. Okay.
If I understand right.
Sounds like they understand the hoops they gotta jump through.
Yeah, if we go broadband up into 2 this year and the next allocation, it'd probably be okay. Is that what you understand?
For it to be allocated,
We could split them in half and they could still be able to accomplish what they're needing to do. Ask.
Is that correct?
I think,
What's that?
I think,
Sorry.
oh, go ahead.
I didn't quite.
I was just trying to get clarity from.
No, yeah, I think phase 2A, the most expensive one. I mean, in what phases, 2A is probably the most important one we need to start with right now, is it not, Eric?
As soon as all the partners are aligned, yeah, I mean, their relative importance, they're all pretty high up there, that's why we put them on this year's, as opposed to the other, 6 or 7 that we had identified. So they're all fairly important, but, getting started and having the allocation certainly helps, for sure. It's possible that we can, with DOLA, we haven't gone through the DOLA process enough. Maybe you guys have a non-broadband stuff that you would know, but whether they need to have that funds committed before the project starts, or if we can say, well, it's like, okay, we have some set aside. If we get the rest of it, further allocation during a time period, that might be fine. I haven't gone through the DOLA project enough to know if that's the way that they work or not, or if that all has to be committed, from the beginning.
Still don't know, maybe I'll ask a point, but so your ask is right around 600,000 is what my understanding is. If we earmark half of that this year, would you still be able to start and complete? By the time the next funding cycle came around?
Starting complete by the next funding cycle?
Yes, sir. As far as the ARPA money.
Well, some of it might require that next round to finish the allocation. So it'd be more of a, can we pay while we're going along, and this is a down payment. All 3 of those projects, if they started, had full funding and started, could be done by, what is it, May, that you get your next allocation? June, somewhere in that time?
Yeah, May or June, I believe.
All 3 of those could be done. I am not in control of whether that they get started.
Right.
It's kind of like the CDOT project. They have their plan of when they're going to finish, and then they got pushed out a year. So it's hard to say yes verifiably, but could they all be finished? Yes.
Okay. All right. Further?
No, I'm not sure how we're going to do the motion, because I expect that we all have different values. As
Yeah,
far as dollar values.
If you prefer, I wouldn't mind if we handled these from item 1 through 11.
Just one at a time?
Yeah, one at a time. It's
Okay.
clear, it's transparent, we understand it, people understand.
I like that.
Good. I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if we're going from 1 through 11, I would move to 50% funding for Archuleta County Housing Corporation to 28250. For this year's cycle.
A second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Sir, go ahead.
I'm sorry, so 282, 500, is that what you mean, or 282?
$282,000.
$50.
$50.
Okay, that's what I clarified, thank you.
My second still stands.
Yes, sir. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, Archuleta County Housing Association. Motion.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Good. All right. Mr. Chair, I move for Archuleta County Housing Association. Their ask was $643,640. I move that we allocate $321,050.
Motion and a second. Who's there second?
A second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 3, Archuleta County Sheriff's Office for mental health services. Wait a minute. And that one, we didn't discuss this one, but my understanding, the only way this would qualify was if it's directly related to COVID-19 pandemic. Is that correct?
That is correct, it has to be directly related.
This is ineligible then.
Well, it's only if it would be eligible if the increased need of mental services is directly related to the COVID pandemic. If it's just for mental health services,
Right.
period. It does not meet the parameters or criteria for approval.
Okay, you want to ask Mr. Woodman, Sheriff?
Sure.
We were going on to you guys' request on the mental health. And according to staff, it doesn't meet the criteria unless it's directly related to COVID-19. And is it, wouldn't all be directly related to, would it?
The relation would be that we don't have to remove them out of the facility, that they're able to have teleconferencing, and so they're not susceptible to any outside influence for the COVID-19. So that would be the relation.
But that's for the hallway, correct, or?
No, sir, that would
That's
be
for the
for
council.
Council, the mental health council would be in the jail rather than. You guys have any further questions?
I don't have any further questions. I was just operating off of the, off of Mr. Weaver's findings. So I did not allocate in my prioritization
That,
any dollar amounts to
it
that.
didn't make a priority on mine.
That's why I just want. Okay, so do we have a motion to strike that? Or just move on?
No.
Just move on to where I'm gonna get through.
Yes, that's correct. You just do it that way.
Alright. So a new item for you, Archuleta County handle housing sheriff's office for UV lighting.
Now,
Was that included in the walkway?
That's what I
I thought the lighting was included in the walkway.
I thought that was.
Sheriff or under sheriff?
we got up for short.
Was the UV lighting included in the walkway price earlier when we had that special
Yes.
meeting?
Okay.
Yes, okay.
So we can start that one too.
I thought that it was included in mine.
Okay, so we're just chopping this up. Make number 5, number 3. On broadband services for phase 1A. Or do we want to combine these? Or do you guys want to proceed with that one? To make it simpler to combine it? How do you think? Proceed with your motion?
I'm fine to make, I would like to make a motion to full fund broadband services. I know it's a big chunk out of this year's funding, but it's money that's gonna be readily available when these projects come to fruition, and then they can execute as quick as possible.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I made a comment before.
Yes, go ahead.
So it looks like the ask from broadband at full funding price is $598,333.33. Is that correct, Mr.
Correct.
That's it.
Totally got it.
Okay. I'll second the motion then.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, so we're down to item number 9, which will be new item number 4. No, we can strike that one too because it didn't make it.
Correct. Just by 9 and 10, we can strike it.
So let's go to item 10. It did qualify.
Oh, it did?
Yes, I believe that item 10 did qualify.
The Food Coalition Hub?
Tom?
No,
It's
it
vice
was,
versa.
right, it's the first one, food distribution center, rent, utilities management, food purchasing, transportation, spread over 2 years. That ask was $286,000.
So they did qualify. So
Yeah, it was the second, the $350,000 capital fund that did not qualify.
Okay. Everybody clear as well on that one?
Yes.
I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to award the funds received by Archuleta County for the year 1 from the American Rescue Plan Act to the following. It's the Food System Food Equity Coalition in the amount of $286,000.
Were we gonna split that in 2 years? Or were we gonna-
I was gonna split that to 2 years.
Yes,
So
that is my understanding.
143 for this year.
Yes.
So the motion was for 143,000.
Okay, the motion was 143. I second the motion.
Okay, motion is second, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. All right, so on to item number 5 will be. Oh, this one's on.
Aspen House is what it's saying.
Aspen House. Well, that's not on
One thing about the presentation that was made, I believe there was funding for admin on this. Is there anybody here from the food coalition? Yes.
Oh, no,
From the Aspen House.
Yeah.
For the Aspen House, there is funding for admin on it?
Yes, it's for staffing,
Okay, staffing is, what was it, about 70,000?
75.
about 75, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then 100,000 would go directly into the project then?
Well, the rest of it was actually, ideally would be for other support staff to the Aspen Services Director, who would be the one that is currently providing services. So, to support that in direct relation, we've got to have that to provide the services for the adults. So it was all actually basically a staffing ask, but without that staffing, we don't move forward and we can't provide the services.
Okay.
And as I recall, the request was for the last quarter of this year and for the full next year.
Next year, it's a
And
one-time ask.
Yeah, one-time ask, and it was an executive director and then the assistant, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move to fully fund 175,000.
176.
Is that 76?
Yes.
176,000
For the Aspen House.
for the Aspen House.
A second.
It's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Carries.
I believe there's actually one
I was thinking there's one that didn't get on there.
Habitat for Humanity
Yes,
that passed for $150,000,
Yes.
which did not make it on
So
the
we'll call that number 6.
motion cheat sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll call that number 6. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to award funds received by Archuleta County for the year. One, from the American Rescue Plan Act to Habitat for Humanity for $150,000.
A second?
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Now we're already in the measures line too.
Yeah.
Mhm. And just
We are.
need to, just for cleanup, on the motion for the Archuleta County Housing Association. That should actually be the Archuleta County Housing Authority. Maybe we could amend that motion just to correct the
Will be
name.
item number 2.
Maybe item number 2, correct? Yes.
Housing Authority?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I wish to re-amend my motion. Was it my motion?
Yes, I believe
Yes,
so.
yes,
Yes,
yes. Re-amend my motion for the Housing Authority
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
to be allocated $321,050.
I second.
There's been a amendment to the motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Agenda here. Okay, item number F, appointment of interim county administrator. We discussed this morning at some length. Excuse me. And have decided pretty much that it might be an unfair advantage if we were to appoint someone from the hiring process that submitted an application. So there was the recommendation from the outgoing administrator that maybe our county attorney would be willing to serve as the interim until at such point we hire someone. Do the commissioners have any questions or comments in reference?
I think that in lieu of the situation that we're in, I think it's extremely important that we appoint an interim county manager. And as a discussion this morning, the recommendation that I put out there was to recommend Todd Weaver for that position. And in the work session, Todd Weaver said he would be able to do that. I know it's asking him to take another load, but he didn't mind it. And I'd like to hear it from you, Todd, if you don't mind.
I'd be happy to serve. I know that we can accelerate a hiring process, and that would be helpful. I have a full plate, but who doesn't have a full plate? So life is always busy. If I can balance all the work that I need to get done. Luckily, some of the major litigation has concluded successfully, I might add, which is nice.
Good job.
So that helps to kind of clean my plate a bit and allow me to, I believe I can handle it. If the board wants me to serve in that capacity, I'd be happy to do so.
Okay. Mr. Chair,
Prior to the motion, may I make a comment?
Yes, sir. Please.
So I appreciate the perspective that's been offered on the matter, both earlier, last week and today, at the suggestion of an interim county manager. I may have a different opinion on the matter, and I would like to share that with my fellow commissioners, Mr. Weaver, and those attending, whether you're in person or by Zoom. As a county board, I believe that we have worked very well together. And although we've not always agreed, I feel that we have always shared the appropriate amount of professional respect and courtesy for one another and each other's preference and perspective. It is because of this respect, I believe that we've been able to accomplish the volume of work that we have completed this year. Losing former county administrator Scott Ball sooner than hoped, I see the county without a solid replacement or a solid succession plan. And this is the situation where we find ourselves. According to, it's a site called EDU CBA, succession versus replacement planning assuming the organizational chart will remain the same over time. And this addresses usually the short-term needs. Succession planning oriented around developing people instead of merely identifying them as replacements, and it addresses the long-term need. Just an example, right now the county has begun the annual budget process, and this process affects every office of every elected official and every department. We have winter approaching, so the road maintenance, snow removal will be increased with inclement weather. This affects directly the road and bridge, fleet, sheriff's office, finance, and dispatch. We have numerous vacancies within the county, 17 to be exact, that need to be filled. This affects HR, human resource, dispatch, clerk, fleet, road and bridge, transit, Department of Health and Human Services, sheriff's office, and the administration. We have a health investigation committee that is currently looking into the quality of service that we're receiving from San Juan Basin Health. This affects the departments of the Board of County Commissioners and our finance. We have the courthouse that is still yet to be completed. It is looking like it's going to be on time in October, but this affects finance, our courts, our sheriff's office, our assessors, our treasurers, clerk and recorder, and HR, because we can't start or consider another project, in my opinion, until we've completed the one at hand. I encourage us to remember that the biggest group that I've not yet mentioned who will be impacted or cause a need for leadership are the citizens of Archuleta County. And how long you will have to wait, and we will have to wait to make sure that we stay on track, get on track, or whatever the case is. I believe that we face exigent circumstances when faced with replacing Mr. Wall as the county manager, and it's critical to have an interim that can devote their full time and concentration to the matter. Further, I believe it's critical that we appoint a replacement that's very familiar with governmental operations and management. And lastly, I think that it's just important that we try to do what's right in this process. We're talking about a 6-month potential process, so this would be March of 2022. Now, we might be able to speed this up and expedite this, but I'm not sure how likely that is. And if we have a qualified candidate who's in the county and familiar with operations, I think we should give consideration. Thank you, that's my comment.
Okay. Excuse me, I just have one comment as well. Not here. as good as yours, probably. I can write it down.
I'm a cheater, I can't remember.
Now, I know the county's been in this position how many times in the last 5 years, 4 years?
Yeah, about 3 to 4
3 or
times.
4 times, and it's a struggle. And we brought in former admin people that worked here prior and agreed to help us out. And I agree, partly with Commissioner Brown, it's a lot to ask of someone in your position who's already got so much going on. The only thing that I had concern with is just make sure that we can be, what's the word, unbiased if we happen to appoint someone who is has submitted an application. That's my only concern. So.
And I appreciate that. May I say, just for the record, I have full faith in Mr. Weaver. And it's out of respect for him, partially that I had mentioned this, because I don't want to overload him and I want him to be able to do all of the things that he's responsible for now. And additionally, if he has more heaped upon him as a county manager, as you can see, we have a lot going on. And some of these things are very time sensitive.
Mr. Chair, in all respect to all of us here, it's up to us on how quick we expedite this.
Right.
You know, it's up to us. We're receiving the applications. I've been reviewing the ones I've gotten, as of you guys have too as well. We can execute and expedite this a lot faster than what our timeline is. That's up to us. The other part is, I had also spoken with Leanne. She said she wouldn't mind being the budget officer either for setting the budget this year, because we need that. The county manager's role in that is crucial too. Us as county commissioners, we need to share the load. So if we need to split up parts of the county and each of us assume parts of those roles, then we should. And I think if we coordinate and collaborate with Todd Weaver on this, we can execute and keep things going and moving along quickly.
That's all I can say. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I guess I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to appoint Todd Weaver as interim county administrator as presented.
That motion. Can I comment there in the middle? I would be more apt to give a second to something like this if we could put in the said motion that time frame. Maybe we expedite our hiring process. The time limit.
Well, as presented was the time frame not to exceed what.
Yes, not to exceed.
I'll challenge us 4 months.
Well, it's maybe shorter than that, because 4 months is a long time when he's running. I think it'd be better for
3 months.
Yeah.
I can support
What? You can support that? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I amend my motion to move to appoint Todd Weaver as county interim administrator as presented with 3 months.
A second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're an aye, sir?
Aye.
Okay. I figured you did since it was your motion. All right, motion carries. Okay. On to the next item. Motion to go into executive session. First, discussing personnel matters.
Mr. Chair, I move to go into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 246402, subsection 4 FI, for personal matters, and Colorado Revised Statute 246402, subsection 4 E and I, for determining positions that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategies for negotiations, and instructing negotiators in connection with the renewal of the county attorney employment contract.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. We're gonna adjourn the regular meeting.
Recess.
Recess the regular meeting, thank you, at 2:35.
You need to state it.
Commissioner Schaaf, Maez, Brown, and Attorney Weaver will be going to executive session. No decisions will be made. recess regular meeting 2:35.
Will you be making a decision after the executive session?
I have no idea.
Possibly?
Possibly is a good
It's
answer.
always, yeah.
Always a possibility.